Welcome to Healthy University, where we'll discuss issues and subjects on how you can live a healthier and more productive life. And now, here's your host for Healthy University, Alan Eisenberg.
Hi, and welcome to Healthy U. This is your host, Alan Eisenberg, and I am so happy to have my guest, Melissa Wilson, for the third time, she just mentioned to me, from The Grass Gets Greener. So Melissa, welcome to the show, and why don't you tell me what you've been up to? I know you've been up to different things, and share that with the audience.
Yeah. Well, first off, thanks for having me back, Alan, for the third time, as you mentioned. I feel honored. But yeah, so I am still hosting the Grass Gets Greener podcast, where I've had you on a couple times now as well. So it's been great to just, connect with you this way and have these conversations. I'm also recently gotten into life coaching. So I just got a certification in that back in April, and I'm offering that now to my audience. So just excited to have that out there, and just as another means of being able to support those that are, support survivors who are interested in what I'm doing. So yeah, I mean, that's what I've been up to, and just focusing right now on just kind of growing the brand and getting myself out there more, and just trying to reach more people and help more people. So that's what I have been up to.
Yeah, it's so cool that you're life coaching now, and of course,
yeah, I know you do it as well.
Yeah, I've been doing it a couple of years, and then my big announcement, and I know people are probably wondering why there haven't been as many vodcasts for Healthy U lately. I went back to school. I'm getting my master's in clinical mental health counseling. So I'm going to make my passion my career and really try to help people.
That's awesome.
Get better, yeah. So today, a little trigger warning for those listening. We're going to talk about suicide, and we're going to talk about really what we've been seeing lately with people who are famous and the suicides of Anthony Bourdain, or Linkin Park singer Chester Bennington. Sorry, I might have butchered that, but they're not that unique. There's actually a lot of that goes on. I guess, starting with sort of the Anthony Bourdain, I think a lot of people were shocked when he did commit suicide, although I didn't know it, but he did have depression and a drinking problem. But why do you think, Melissa, and what you know now about coaching and what you've been through, and what we've talked about before, what are your initial thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, well, I mean, like you're saying, I think it's always shocking when you hear it. It's such a tragedy. And, I mean, I had, I knew of Anthony a little bit, and watched some of his shows a few times. And I wasn't really aware that, he had some other stuff going on sort of behind the scenes. And you kind of, you look at celebrities or, someone like him, and you think that, they have a good life. And I think it just goes to show that there's always stuff going on that we just don't know about. There are things beneath the surface that it's so hard to know sometimes, especially, if people are not letting us into that part of their life. And I remember actually, having a conversation with someone that evening, and was out walking my dog and talking to someone about it. And we were just talking about how it just seems to be happening, more often. And I don't know if maybe it's just, there's more attention brought to it now when these sorts of things happen, if the news is just kind of making it seem like it's happening more. But, it's just definitely one of those things. It's always, for me, it's always, it's hard to hear. I have personally lost a couple people in my life to suicide. And so it's always a little bit triggering for me. And it's just heartbreaking, and you wonder, what can we do to help those who are really struggling in that way? To try to prevent this sort of thing from happening, because it's so tragic, it's so final,
Yeah, and I've had four friends myself who have taken their own lives, And for various reasons, one was having a problem with the law, the other one was getting divorced and lost his business. A myriad of reasons, but at the tail end of it all, and I think particularly with these famous people, is the fact that there's a belief that there's nothing left, that, whether that's through depression, anxiety, drinking and drugs, all of these things we know are secondary precursors sometimes to a choice of suicide. There's just a failure to see that there's anything else. And I think what's important is that suicide does not discriminate. I mean, I think the statistic right now is 231 Americans take their own lives every day. So when we hear about, someone famous, and I think you make a good point, why are we hearing more about it? I just think there's more famous people. Like, there's so much media now. From when I was younger, there were movies and TV. Now there's movies, TV, lots of channels on TV. There's just so many more people. And I think people don't really understand yet that, no amount of money, fame, or power changes things like depression or feeling like you don't have a big self-worth,
It's true. It's true. I mean, if you have things going on inside of you, if you're struggling with those sort of things, it's not going to matter, really what your lifestyle is like, unless you are addressing those issues and where they're really stemming from and getting the help that you need. It's going to be a challenge to overcome them, regardless of who you are, and what sort of fame you may have,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that when we talk about someone famous, I think we miss a big part of that. And I've always thought this. I always thought, well, I really don't want to be famous, because what you end up giving up is your freedom. You can't just go out, walk the street. You can't just. We take for granted these things that we enjoy in life, and there's an entrapment to being famous that I think that people forget. If you, prior to Robin Williams taking his life, saw him walking down the street, you can imagine all these people just congregating around him, and maybe he had felt, I just want to be alone. I just want that mindfulness time.
Mm-hmm. And I think you have to wonder, what kind of role that stigma plays in all of this when it comes to celebrities. You think of everyday people. I mean, there's enough of a stigma there. But when you take someone who is in the limelight, if you will, and in that position, they probably feel even more shame around what they're going through, and feel like it's even more difficult for them to be able to speak out about it, to get the help that they need, because there's so much on the line for them, right? And they don't want to kind of show that weakness. They need to kind of to put up that facade. And I know you're talking about like Robin Williams, and everyone thought that he was fine because he's a funny guy and does comedy, and so it's like it's hard to know that there's so much sadness and depression behind all of that.
Yeah, and that's a great point you make. And with the Robin Williams thing, we always talk about the clown under the makeup, right? The old parable about the clown wearing is just wearing makeup, and we put on masks, and a lot of times, we hear a lot about comedians who die early, like John Belushi or Chris Farley, comedians who are heavy in drugs and alcohol. And I think there is something to being a comedian. There's a lot of pressure, one. Two, I think that when people, this is kind of a weird thing to say, but to me, if I'm making it my goal to make other people happy all the time, it's because I have this need of appreciation, or I would feel like, their laughter, there is feeding me. And it's because I'm not feeling that good about myself. And I think that's just something unique that we don't always catch with, particularly people who are trying to make other people happy or laugh, that they're missing something inside. And I experienced that with one of my friends who took their life. what we found out.
Yeah, you're saying so they can just end up needing that validation.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then I think when we look at the fields, of acting and music, one of the things that always strikes me, and I did acting for a while, so I know, a bit about what it takes, not a whole lot, but, I always tell people, I say, imagine that you have to cry for real in a scene as an actor, or you have to show any emotion. So you have to do recall all the time. You have to be able to recall terrible times at times to do the acting that is needed to be done. Or if you're a musician, you're writing lyrics that maybe they're painful. Maybe it was a painful, there are some songs you listen to, you go, wow, that person, that's deep, It's like, but they wrote it, and they probably wrote it with them or somebody in mind. And so they're very much touched, what I call touched people. They work from the heart, and that takes a toll. It does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very true. I mean, I've never done any, acting or written any songs, but I can imagine, you have to tap into those feelings to be able to really, if you're going to play your part well, to get to those places. And I can imagine like that must be hard to kind of separate, your fantasy from your actual reality sometimes.
And I think it's true that people need help. I mean, we hear a lot about actors, any of these people. It's only because they're in the spotlight that we hear about when they need help, when they go get help. And now that I'm kind of working toward getting a degree in that helping profession, I realize that we all could use help at times. My father passed away the other week, and it was tough. And I went and got some guidance and help from my trusted mentors, and I think that you make a good point. Do they feel secure in doing that, or do the people who take their own lives, are they missing that there's an opportunity, that people are really do care about them, and that they're missing this, that they're missing that's there for them? And as an actor or as a famous person, you go to the psychiatrist, psychologist, therapist, counselor, you get a stigma, and that still exists today. I think that's something I'm very interested in breaking, is that stigma of getting mental health help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we've made great strides in that regard, but it's definitely still there.
Yeah.
Still there. It makes it difficult for people to be able to reach out.
Yeah. And, do you think that, one thing I always say about suicide, like in your experience around it with the people that you knew, what could you say about them? I mean, were there any clear signs? Or what I found is I can't ever identify a sign. In fact, if anything, they seemed happy right before they did it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, actually, with the two people that I know, there were very clear signs.
Mm.
And actually, there were multiple attempts in both cases. And that makes it even harder, It's like you're doing what you can to try to help, and it seems like it's not enough, and it's just sad because, it's like when someone seems to be determined to do it, unless, that they're you have them kind of, hospitalized or in a situation where they don't have that opportunity, it's really hard to be able to control that and to make sure that they don't actually go through with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just tough. And I think, when you're in that place, and, I've been in some dark places myself, and I've had some thoughts, and I understand, like, you're not thinking about anything or anyone else. You're in so much pain. You're hurting so much that you want that to stop. You want it to end. And that's really all you can focus on. And so I think it's so hard, but it's why, it's so important that those people, do feel like they can reach out, and that especially if you do see signs in someone that they're in some serious trouble, to get them that help and do whatever you need to do to make sure they're not going to go through with it, because it's so difficult, and when you're in that situation, you're feeling so hopeless and helpless. It's really hard to see kind of, the light at the end of the tunnel, and to know that things can get better.
I agree. And unfortunately, we need to take a quick break, but when we come back, let's continue the discussion and maybe move it into some of our own areas of our own, past, as you were mentioning, but also with the bullying, the bully side, and some of the other things we see in the suicide world. So, Melissa, if you'll hold on, we'll be right back with more Healthy You.
You're listening to Healthy University with Alan Eisenberg.
Hi, this is Alan Eisenberg, and welcome to more Healthy You. I'm here with Melissa Wilson. We've been talking about, the famous people who have been committing suicide, but suicide as a whole. And, Melissa, the one thing that I always talk about, and people always look at me like, what do you mean? What I say is that suicide as an act, a person committing suicide, it's a selfish act. It's not that the person is selfish. It's that the act is, because they really don't see the ramifications, the people. I'll never forget I had a fraternity brother who took his life, and the amount of fraternity members that came to his funeral from all across the country would just blew my mind. And it's just this whole thing that we never know all the lives we touch until we're gone,
Mm-hmm.
So in that vein, like, how are you as a coach? And I know coaching isn't counseling, but you mentioned you've been in places before, and I'm sure you mentor others. What kinds of ideas or things do you have that we could, try to make a difference in this issue of suicide?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a tough one, like you're saying. I mean, when someone's in that place, it's really hard to kind of to think about anything else. You're just focused on your pain and what you're going through. And I think, from what I've experienced through my own personal losses, I think, the most important thing, the first step is to get them, medical help, to get the psychiatric help, and to get them the treatment they need, and really just, have them, I think, to be in some type of program where they're not alone, and they can really work on getting out of that really dark place to a state where they're more functional. And then, from there, I mean, I think just being able to speak to someone, to have a counselor at that point, and look at, what's really going on, what are the issues in their life that are making them so depressed, and help them, to work through that. And, then eventually start focusing on kind of building up their future, building up their life. And it's almost like, it's kind of a rebuilding at that point, when you get down that low, and hopefully, be able to get them to turn it around. I think, the most important thing is to start seeing results, or to start feeling like you're making progress and you're getting some momentum, so that you can get out of that dark place and know that, like, even if things get bad again, that you still have things to look forward to. You have tools and resources that can pull you through it, so that, hopefully you don't get back to being really low like you were before. And then, yeah, and really, and just being able to go from there and build up your life and make it something that you feel good about. And I know, that's a long process. It takes time to kind of go from being in that dark place to feeling really good about where you're at. But I think that's why, it's just so important to have support and to just keep getting encouragement along the way, to know that, you're on that path, and to just focus, I think, on one day at a time and not look at the big picture, not look at like this whole mountain in front of you that you need to climb, but just take it one small step at a time, and, hopefully eventually get yourself out of that dark place.
That's great. It really is. When you talk about rebuilding, I think a lot of people think, this is the end. Well, there's lots of people who experience that. There's lots of people who experience this is the end of this. And I always talk to people, I say, there's a great saying out there, and if you keep it in the back of your mind, this too shall pass, is such a great saying. And people go, why is that? Why do you think that's a great saying? I say, because it's never defined what this is. They're not saying it's bad. They're not saying it's good. It'll pass. Everything's a balance, and life is a balance. And it's unfortunate, particularly when it's younger people. And in fact, in the bullying world that I've studied, you've got 6, 7, 8-year-old kids who have taken their own lives, who at that early an age understand in their mind that they think life's not going to get any better. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, as I study my program, we are finding out, or I'm finding out, how early learning happens in our lives, and how important those the thing, I've been theorizing it for years, and now I'm actually learning it, how important those childhood years are, and how they do truly affect us, and have this giant long-term effect. So there's even this current study called ACE, which looks at childhood trauma and the effects it has as you get older. And it assumes you'll get older, but suicide's definitely in there. But what's really scary is that if you don't get help, if you don't seek a coach, a counselor, somebody to get help to get past the trauma, you will lose 20 years off your life.
Mm. Wow, that's crazy.
It's an unbelievable study, and it's kind of changed everything that I thought, because I kind of knew this in the back of my head that childhood trauma can lead to some dire consequences, but now it's been studied by 17,000 people, and this is the result. So what we know is, bullycide is real. The effects that happen to you as a child will be in perpetual motion without getting help. And I think that's really the part that I know I have a calling to do, and I know, as we've talked, you have a calling to do. The other interesting thing is that in both our fields, there's something called informed consent and duty to warn. And so confidentiality is really important. And I believe that 100%, anybody I talk to, it's confidential, except the only time you can't make it that way, you have to report it, is if someone's going to harm themselves or others. Mm-hmm. And then we have to do something about it. So, I think it's good for people to understand, they're not alone. And in fact, when they seek help, they get help, because we know how difficult it is to ask for that help. As you said, you've been in dark places, I've been in dark places, and it's really hard to come up and say, help me,
Mm-hmm.
help me, I'm down here and I'm stuck and I don't know what to do. And that's really what I feel like with suicide we see a lot of. is that people get stuck in a dark place. And again, if you're famous, everybody around you is like, oh, come on, you just keep going. And that's it. Even not famous people hear that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think given what you know now as a coach, what you studied, what did you find, you learned as a coach in order to help people better, to be able to work with them better?
I think it's just about, coaching is kind of helping someone to work on their future, right? Whereas I think, going to a therapist, you're kind of focusing more on your past. And coaching is trying to take you, forward and help you to build that life that you want for yourself. And so to help you to kind of to see what your goals are and what your dreams are, and to help you kind of figure out how to make that into reality, so that you can realize you realize that you can create that life that you want for yourself, whatever it might be, and that you can, even if you are not sure what that is, you can work with your coach to figure that out. And I think, that's such a great thing. I mean, coaching has been really helpful for me, and just personal development work in general. Just getting me to focus on my future and seeing how I can take control of my life, and, how I spend my time. And, it's so important to be mindful of, the things that you're thinking about, or the choices that you're making, and how those all kind of, tie into how you feel about yourself. So I think, coaching is great in that regard. And if someone is in that place where they've, dealt with their past, really, kind of worked through a lot of the stuff that's been, deeply affecting them. And coaching can help you in that regard too, help you to still look at things, limiting beliefs you might have that are holding you back. But if you kind of, if you've done sort of the counseling or the therapy part, and you want to focus more on your future now, then coaching is great for that.
And I think, as I learned coaching and as I started working with people, it all starts at the same place to me, which is self-esteem. Nobody can ever sort of get to where they want to get to with their goals. So whether it's coaching, counseling, or anything, you have to build up the self-esteem. You have to build up the self-belief that you can do it and that it's in your control. So I did a lot of self-esteem work. Do you find, that that's something you work on as well as the goals? Because, I always have the goals, but we're always working on a little bit of self-esteem push as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, self-esteem is really important. And it was one of the things that, I was definitely very low in after I had gone through the bullying experience. And yeah, I think it was probably one of the first things that I started working on, because it's really hard, to be able to focus on goals and things that you want to accomplish for yourself when your self-esteem is low. And I think it's, as you're working on your self-esteem and building up your confidence, then you want to start focusing more on the goals and what you can do, because you have more belief in yourself at that point that you can go for it. And then, of course, as you're working on achieving your goals as well, that's going to continue to build up your self-esteem also. So,
and I think we're probably two shining examples of people that have been working on that. And as I like to tell people, who ask me, when are you not going to be working on it? And I said, when I'm done, when life's over, that's when I won't be working on it. But I'm always a work in progress. And my wife would tell you, the day before classes started for this program I'm doing, I was going to quit. I mean,
you were going to quit.
Yeah, I was totally like, I can't do it. No, it's gonna, and then, I just finished my first semester with 2 A's. So it's just one of those.
How's your self-esteem now?
Yeah, exactly. It's huge. It's huge, right? Now it's like, because I really wanted it, but I was still in self-doubt mode. We all get there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a good point to kind of come to fruition here, is that, self-doubt is everybody. You know, the people you see succeed overcome those doubts. The people that you see who are finding success, and success has to be defined by you. You know, for Melissa right now, it's probably coaching. For me, it's this program. But what is success? What it never is fame, is my opinion. But fame, fortune, and you know, attention. None of those things are going to give you self-esteem, and none of those things are going to make you stronger. And I think as we talk about, you know, famous people, you know, there's a litany. You can go online and see all the people. Chris Cornell this year, you know, two musicians who were still at the top of their game, take their own lives. Kurt Cobain back in the 90s at the top of his game takes his life. And it's really because there's things going on that nobody can understand. So one of the things I think we have to do is just pay more attention, you know, really be paying attention to people, because everybody will put on a mask, but they can't wear it forever. Right.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And such an important point that you were making there, that self-esteem has to come from within, things that, you know, you're doing internally for yourself, and not from the fame or the attention that you might be getting externally.
Yeah. And I call that, you know, your authentic self. You know, who are you really? And again, getting back into fame, you know, if you're putting on a mask every day, and we all wear masks to some extent. I go to work and I'm a different personality than I am when I get home. But if you're wearing a mask every day, like an actor or a musician or all this, then, you know, what are you hiding underneath it? And really getting to the root of that issue, that there are people who are hiding, and we have to be cognizant that, you know, they might be giving off a signal. You know, there was a story about Robin Williams at an airport, and this woman had just lost her husband. She was sitting crying, and he came over, you know, to comfort her. And it was the day before he took his own life, you know, but here he is going over to help somebody else, you know. But that's telling. People that want to help other people are usually people who have either gotten help or want help also. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So mm-hmm. I think, you know, we struggle with being our authentic self sometimes, because, you know, going back to bullying or even workplace, you know, why are we not being who we want to be? You know, what don't we like about ourselves? So one piece of advice I always have for some of my coaching clients is take yourself out on a date. You know, how are you? You know, are you fun to be with? Are you, what do you like taking yourself out? And they get really weird about it. But at the same time, it's like, how are you going to do self-discovery if you don't spend time with yourself?
Mm-hmm. So true. Yeah, you have to be okay with being alone with yourself.
Yeah.
And if that's uncomfortable for you, you have to look at why.
Yeah. And what is it you like? You know, do you ever make a list of things you like? Because I know people, one of my best friends is a caretaker. You know, he gets great satisfaction out of taking care of others. But, you know, I don't know what he likes. I don't know what it would be for him to be taken care of. And I know he's got some painful things in his past, and I know that that's the reason he is the way he is. But, you know, I worry about him. I think about that. So I think we're gonna wrap up here. So how can people reach out to you, Melissa, and I guess learn about your coaching, how you might be able to help them with that, and listen to your own podcast?
Sure. Well, they can pretty much find everything over on my website, which is justthegrassgetsgreener.com. And everything is there. There's a contact form as well if you'd like to reach out, or if you'd like to schedule a complimentary coaching session. We can, you know, take a look at where things are at for you right now, where you would like for them to be, and come up with, you know, some strategies on the next best step you can take to get going toward that, and then determine if, you know, if we're right to work together or not. But yeah, just everything is on there. The podcast is on iTunes, and just love to connect with anyone who would like to reach out with me.
Great. It's coaching is really beautiful work, and I've loved everything I've done in it, and I just want to extend it. I mean, that's the beautiful thing. But Melissa, it's always great to have you on the show. Third time's a charm. We'll keep doing it as much as we can. And I wish you luck in all your endeavors in the coaching world and your own show.
All right. Thanks, Alan. It's always great to come on and talk with you.
Yeah. I love talking to you too.
All right.
Great. So this is Alan Eisenberg with Healthy You. And I want to thank Podcast Garden for hosting the show. And please join us next time.
Thank you for listening to Healthy University, brought to you by Bullying Recovery, LLC. This podcast does not replace the need for medical advice, professional diagnosis, opinion, treatment, or services to you or any other individual. The information provided here or through linkages to other sites is not a substitute for medical or professional care, and you should not use the information in place of a visit, call, consultation, or the advice of your physician or other healthcare provider. Join us next time for more Healthy University.